All right, welcome back, everybody. Thirsty Thursday, number 49. And I think if we look at our actual episode numbers and how many we've put out, I think my numbering is off. The whole counting from 1 to 3 to 5, whatever it is. Apparently, I didn't make that day of school, so we'll get that fixed at some point. Yeah, thanks, buddy. Tonight we have Roy Friedrich with us. From one of the logo that you may notice and recognize on his hat is National Rescue Consultants. We've had in the past Herbie Tyler, running that and doing a fantastic job in Florida with technical rescue, pumps, all kinds of training. Um, in Florida, and as Roy and I were talking before the show started, Herbie's planning to take over the world with fire service training. So I'm sure at some point we'll chat a little bit about that. But welcome back, Thirsty Thursday. Cheers, gentlemen. It's good to see you.
Solid.
Look at that.
Thanks for having me, guys. Train to live. There you go.
Train to live. Way to go.
I'm going dry tonight, but cheers.
Yeah, but you're going to Jobtown.
That's right.
That's right. So yeah, we'll just kick it around like we normally do. Welcome back, everybody. Like we said, I think at the end of our last show, we're pretty well planned out through February, which I'm pretty excited about. That's the first time we've ever done that, and I'm still working on into March. So if I don't make it to the end, keep an eye out and watch our social media, watch our website, and see what we got coming. So that's all I have for the start. Trevor.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate it. Excited to have Roy on tonight. Like you had said, he teaches with National Rescue Consultants, Herbie Tyler's group, which is a bunch of quality folks that just give nothing but quality training, a bunch of solid individuals. And I've actually had Roy in my department on quite a few occasions now, to do some training with my folks. And it's always nice to know, and we'll talk about this a little bit more that we talked about pre-show, but it's always nice to know that somebody kind of understands where you're coming from, whether or not you 100% agree on everything or don't. You still have the same mindset, you have the same background, you have the same mission focus, and that's what's really important. Not just with the NRC guys, but to Roy's credit, we can sit there and just talk very viscerally, whether it's in my office or the tailboard of the fire engine or text or on the phone, what have you. These people are going to take these nuggets of information and pass them along, and it's just so important. Unfortunately, Bobby's got some family obligations tonight. He can't be with us, but and Roy, if you ever get a chance to meet Bobby McGee, super, super smart guy, one of the smartest guys in the fire service that I know, other than these two other mooks on the screen. But, it's always good to have people that, really want to not only engage the current generation of the fire service, but also plant those seeds, for the next generation. And I recently put out I'm not a social media guy as Ben, and I know Bobby always busts my nuggets about, but it's one of those things where, as you get further along in the fire service, you see more, or you should see more and more value in planting trees under, whose shade you'll never sit. So it can't be about, you and your image, your legacy, whatever you want to put forward. It's about that next generation or the generation you may never meet. So with that, I want to kick it over to Michael Wood. Am I calling you, what I call you tonight? Do I call you chief, lieutenant, just badass Charm City fireman? What do you want to be tonight, Mike?
It's not too charming, but I'll just be a fireman tonight because I'm here to learn. I want to hear everything Roy has to say. I'm excited. I might have to step out from time to time, but I'm all ears, man. And I'm like I said, I love being a part of this. I know Roy, I haven't met you before, but I always sit here every time we do this every other Thursday. I sit here with a pad of paper and I am just feverishly writing, man. Always trying to learn. So absolutely. I'm excited for tonight, and thank you for the wonderful introduction there, Trevor.
All right, my turn.
Roy, if you don't mind, just give us a little background on how you started, I guess, in the fire service, and then maybe getting involved with NRC too.
Yeah, so I'll try to make this short. As my colleagues know, I can be a little long-winded at times. So for those of you watching, I will try and keep it as short as possible for you on occasion. How I got started, literally working construction jobs, here and there, bouncing from job to job, not necessarily always going down the right path in life, needless to say, and needed to change. I don't come from a lineage of firemen. Literally not a single one that I'm aware of in my entire family on either side. Literally woke up one morning and knew that I needed to make a change. So that's how I entered, just literally on my own accord. It was a tough road because of the rocky path that I had taken. It was not the easiest thing to get a job. Persevered after a few years. Got a job in South Florida for a fire department, Martin County Fire Rescue, which is my current fire department to this day. I was an ocean rescue EMT on the beach for 4 years before I transitioned or got rehired by the fire department as a firefighter. That was a little over 11 years ago. Spent the better part of a decade at Firehouse 33. Shout out to Firehouse 33, Black Sheep of Martin County. Spent the majority of that time as the driver on Ladder 33. The apparatus that we had there, we had a straight stick ladder truck. We had 2 rescues, and I got to apologize to anybody else not from South Florida. We call rescues, you guys call ambulances. And then we had a heavy rescue there as well. So the heavy we kind of flexed on. It wasn't manned, is not manned. But the ladder and the two rescue trucks were manned permanently. Got promoted to captain about a year and a half ago. I'm currently assigned to training. I'm on days. There's pros and cons to that. I'm just trying to take every day, day by day, and make a difference. I'm honored to be there. This is my passion. I've inadvertently made a career out of, being a fireman first and foremost, but being a trainer. I've got a knack for it. So much so that Herbie Tyler, the man, the myth, the legend, kind of sought me out, which is one of the most flattering things ever, and wanted me to teach for him. That was a couple of years ago, and kind of hit the ground running. That's how I met Chief Steedman, and I teach technical rescue classes, aerial apparatus, and driver operator, like hydraulics, pumping trucks, and stuff like that. I teach at the local college, standards. Enough about myself, though. Enough about myself. That's me.
Awesome. I can tell you that we had Herbie on as probably one of our first 10 shows. And it's probably the first 5 or 6, if I had to guess. I'd have to go back and look. But had a little bit of working with him before that. Obviously just kind of like we did getting this set up. But Herbie is definitely one of those guys that, like, you don't go ask to work for Herbie. That doesn't happen. No. Like it's definitely the other way around. So, just a little bit that I know about Herbie, I think speaks a world of volume for you. So, I'm super excited. Like I said, I'm gonna have to cut out here in a little bit. But I always listen to the show the next day, and so I'm excited to see like how the rest of it turns out.
Excellent.
So, Trevor, what do you think here, boss?
Well, I mean, kind of dovetailing in on what Roy is talking about. There's definitely people that have a passion for the job, and again, I'll give a shout out to the National Rescue guys. That these are, and forgive me if I upset your sensitivities or don't use your appropriate pronoun, because none of that makes a rat's ass in the end of the day. But these are firemen teaching firemen how to be firemen. And, that's such an important trait right now because we live in a very technical world, and not in a negative way, but, if somebody doesn't have an app on their phone for something, a lot of times they're lost. And these guys not only meet and exceed the standards that are set, but they also teach from a very visceral standpoint to say, okay, look, we're going to make sure that you can pass the test and you can, get all your check boxes or everything else. They're not checkbox instructors. And that's what I've respected so much, not only about NRC, but about Roy as well, where, basically when we can have a conversation before he comes in for class and say, okay, what do you need logistically? And how can I stay the hell out of your way? Number one. And then, he's going to make sure that my people are functional at 3 a.m. and 3 p.m. And, just the feedback that I get, which I already know, but it's always nice to hear that reassurance that it's like, when I sit there and, talk to my folks about something, or, they're, you can just tell their level of confidence and competence has risen so much. So that's what I kind of want to talk about a little bit, with Roy, is just, where's that passion come from? And, obviously it's not a paycheck thing, because, none of us are, none of us came here on our private jets tonight to get on this webcast. But, at the same time, there's the sweat equity that goes into this from, all the different people. And, and again, kind of going back to a little bit what we talked about pre-show is, some of the passion, the message, the messenger. But Roy, if you don't mind, talk about a little bit like your early fire service compared to now, that and Ben, you'll be there one day as well. But I think there's more than one 40-hour bitch on the screen right now, unfortunately. And Mike, I know you're one too in Ocean City, so it's all right. But as you go through your career and find out that you have some deficits in your training, not poking anyone else in the eye, but saying, hey, how can I make this better? Not only for me to be the go-to person on my shift, on my unit, but also to be able to pass those things along, because, we realize where we fell short or where we were kind of sold short maybe earlier in our careers. But, Roy, if you don't mind, just kind of, walk us through a little bit of your journey and how you got to, going from fireman to training to, 40-hour guy. I'm sorry. I just had to break.
Man, don't call me that, please.
I know I'm messing with you, but anyway, let's talk about your training journey.
All right. So when I started, for those of you that don't know me, like I had mentioned before, I typically don't take the easy path. It's all self-inflicted, I will admit. I'm not blaming anything on anybody else. Everything is my fault. But from young child to literally today, I tend to choose the hard road. It was no different my first year of becoming a fireman. And I don't shy away from the story. I actually use it as testimony to others. My first year was rough, to say the least. Had me second guessing whether I had even picked the right profession that I had been trying for 4 years to achieve, due to ultra competitive business job opportunities here in South Florida, as well as hiring freezes when I did get hired. It was difficult. It took me 4 years to get hired. Finally got the job. My first year was rough. It was not what I was expecting. My probation got extended. It was difficult. I got into this job, I think like a lot of people do, and I'm not scared to admit it, but, for the schedule, for the pay, it's kind of a, I mean, some would disagree, but it's kind of a flashy job. It's kind of the cool thing to do down here in South Florida. What I like to say is, yes, I chose to pursue this job, but at about 1.5 to 2 years in, after a tough time, this job chose me. And it's kind of the craziest thing. I really had nothing to do with it. I went from, kind of just trying to figure out how to tie my shoes in the morning and go to work and run calls, to all of a sudden, kind of being that 8 to 8 and out the gate type of guy, right? To all of a sudden, I was like just smacked upside the head with a 2x4 by the job. And the job was like, hey, you are going to be, something more. and I kind of just went with it. And really, Chief Steedman kind of mentioned it a few minutes ago. I guess when the passion really started and everything kind of took off for me was, you know, and I know a lot of people can say this about themselves, and, you know, rightfully so, that's good. But I wanted to be the go-to guy. Actually, let me rephrase that. It wasn't that I wanted to be the go-to guy. I didn't want to be the guy that the call failed because of. That is what initially started driving me. Okay, so whether it was, you know, a structure fire, an NVC, a technical rescue call, you know, ladder, engine. I know I said we're not talking about EMS, but, you know, EMS calls, even, like, I didn't want to be the guy that was going to hinder the crew or have a negative effect on the outcome of that call. So that was kind of my initial driving force, and frankly still is to this day. And it's not to be the guy. I just don't want to not be the guy. Does that make any sense? Like, it's not about me. Like, I don't like, you know, thrive off of, you know, people coming to me for the answers. I want everybody up at my level and preferably higher. Like, everybody, whether you got a year on the job or 20 years on the job, you know, I want everybody to elevate their game and to have that type of passion. So, I mean, I could talk and talk and talk, but kind of in a nutshell, you know, that's where the passion first started was, you know, like I said, in the beginning, the brotherhood was lacking a little bit, or so I thought. I found my niche. I found my firehouse, and that's kind of where it took off. And then it was like, you know, a whole world of possibilities opened up. And like I was telling Ben earlier before we went live, and like I said a few minutes ago, was, you know, my firehouse was a ladder truck, 2 ambulances, and a heavy rescue. Down here in South Florida, like, we don't run true ladder and true engine. So being the driver, if we were first due, even though I'm on a ladder, I drive a ladder, I'm doing engine work. Okay. If I'm second due, or if there is ladder truck work to do, then I'm truck work guy. There's also a heavy rescue that if a technical rescue dropped, then we're jumping on that thing. And now we got technical rescues to deal with. Rescue specialist, swift water technician, the sky's the limit. And, you know, it's just, I don't really think about and reflect upon, you know, my achievements. I don't really see them as achievements. I just see them as part of the job, to be honest with you. And anybody, you know, that is trying to claim that they're an asset to their department, it's kind of your duty to be this involved and not just stop it at paramedicine or hazardous materials or technical rescue. Like, you need to be multifaceted. And again, like I was talking to Ben, like, you know, Ben's like, hey, let's talk about some things you like, you know, some of your passions or your passion or whatever. And I'm like, man, like, I've got a lot. I've got a lot of things. It's not just, you know, pumping trucks or just technical rescue. It's a lot of stuff. So, you know, I heard something the other week. You don't have to be into this job 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, but you have to be into this job for the 24 hours a day that you're here. And I think there's too much of that even lacking. At least, I'm not saying my department, but from what I see in the bubble that I live in, there's a lot of guys that just take it for granted and they kind of just do the bare minimum and kind of scrape by. So that's just, you know, I don't point fingers at other people, but I wasn't going to be that guy.
And Roy, real quick, I have to push back on you a little bit about living in a bubble, because I think you're the exception rather than the rule. You know, we've got people who have a lot of different backgrounds on the screen right now, and you know, there's a lot of things we agree on. Again, there's some things we'll sit there and argue and debate over, you know, several pints of Guinness. That's not a problem. But the nice thing is that we all come from a place that, you know, we have a why behind the way we feel. And the strategy or tactics that we're using. And that's one of the things I've respected about you, is, you know, you're going to bring that, you know, to the front and say, and you know, just like you said, I see a lot of that silo thinking, or people in bubbles, like you said, that they're so far behind they think they're in first place. I'm not trying to be rude or disrespectful, but one of the last snot slinging building fires that I was on was with Ben. Ben was my chauffeur, and we had multiple rescues. We had a mayday, as several injured, career-ending injury of one of our crew. So it's one of those things that you take those things with you and say, okay, how could we have done things different or better? But just the mere fact that you're coming at this to say, hey, you know what, we might not be doing true truck work, and that's not an indictment of. I'm a truck monkey by passion. I know Mike is as well. Ben's a hopeless engine guy, but there's always hope for him. He's young in his career. He'll mature and find his masculine side, and get some of that.
If I get the choice between being on an engine and being on a truck, it's on the truck, baby.
No, I know that, but I was
relax.
I was going to sign. I was going to
sign
you up
for that. What's that? Permanent stations. Write that down.
What's that free bottle of testosterone you can get that from the Big Hurt and Doug Flutie and all that? I was going to sign you up for that. I didn't want to tell you. I didn't want to ruin the present for your birthday coming up. But anyway, but that's that's kind of the thing, is that when you can look at your own capabilities and limitations, and I don't say limitations as a negative. It's just that, hey man, here's where I can exist. I know what I can do, and I know what I can do effectively, and I know what I can do is going to start being half-assed from this line forward. To me, that's so important, and I think that's a great mindset to have as an instructor. Also, to say, and I said this to my people Tuesday night. I said, every instructor is going to pass along their strengths and their deficits to you, and we're going to teach you our 85%, meaning that. What works for me 85% of the time is my go-to, my comfort zone, or everything else. That's what I'm going to impart on you. And if there's something outside of that I don't know, I've got to be the big boy in the room to say, hey, that might work. I'm not familiar with that technique, but hey, let's try it. And you can't be afraid to fail in front of your people. And guess what? If it's effed up and it doesn't work, then you go, okay, well, that was a waste of 20 minutes. But guess what? Now we know another way not to do something. So kind of getting a little bit more specific. Roy's done several two-part pump operator or driver engineer classes for my department. So one's an apparatus operator, and the other one's fire department hydraulics. And as my Maryland brethren are painfully aware, there's the pumps class that teaches you all the theoretical things, and it's some really great, interesting questions on the 100-question test. And there's other things that you need to be able to cipher out at 0 dark 30 to make sure that you're maintaining water flow for the guys inside the building. So with that, and Mike and Roy, I kind of want you to share your experience with this. Where do you see that difference between the theoretical and the practical, and how do you make that decision? I know for NRC, there's no line drawn there. You guys go meet the standards and exceed them, but go right to the practical. But from the MIFRE standpoint, the State Fire College standpoint, how do we make sure that we not only present the stuff that we need, but also, not only present the stuff that's required, but how do we meet that expectation to make sure these people are comfortable at 0 dark 30?
So Florida standards are, I'm just going to be objective here. Florida standards are usually pretty high. I deal with it with standards, firefighter 1, firefighter 2. We deal with it when I'm teaching driver operator for NRC. These are state of Florida level certifications that you get at the end. So you have to teach people the theoretical stuff, the textbook stuff, the PowerPoint, because they're trying to achieve the certification, typically to get promoted, right? But you always have to let them know that that's book stuff, but then there's real life stuff. And here's the thing, you can gain knowledge from experience, but you can't gain experience from knowledge. You understand what I'm saying? So at some point you've got to get out there, and we're talking about pumping trucks right now, right? We're talking about engine stuff typically. Where you have to get experience. I mean, listen, when I started 11 years ago, the way my department was run at that time, I was pumping working fires with 6 months on the job. And it was literally, no pun intended, but there's a pun here. It was literally trial by fire. Okay. It was interior crews, room and contents. I had another one that was through the roof, and you're literally 6 months on the job pumping fires. This was before we had actual driver positions. When I teach this class specifically, or any class really, I try and it's a fine line between being a Debbie Downer and acting like you're all high and mighty, but also keeping people in check and letting them know, like, listen, I'm passing on everything I know to you. Okay. But there's a lot more, and you kind of have to go get this yourself. Like, after you leave this classroom, after you leave, our conversation. And that's where the experience comes from. So, the theoretical stuff versus the practical stuff, I found that it's kind of, it's kind of like a lot of things. If you guys remember back to standards, right? Firefighter standards, you learn a lot of stuff, frankly, that you probably haven't done since, right? But it's a foundation, and you have to know these building blocks and these pieces and why these exist to know, like, the next level stuff. So these theories, that exist in, pump operator, there's a lot of math, and a lot of people end up scratching their heads. Why do I need to know this? Cellular level based stuff, kind of. And it's like, listen, it's building the foundation that the more you can know, the better you can be, and the better understanding when the shit hits the fan. Because if anybody's been a driver before, I don't know if you guys have been a driver before, and I'm not saying shit doesn't hit the fan, during other assignments on scene, but the funny thing about driver that's pretty different than everything else on the fire grounds is that the driver, right, the first due engine, the guy pumping the truck, is by himself. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, especially people that haven't been drivers. Everybody else has got a crew member, right? Whether you're search, whether you're vent, whether you're, on the hose line, whatever, the driver is solo. So when something happens, okay, you have to troubleshoot that like yesterday, because we all know why. Because we're here for them, and them are the people that we're saving. And then secondary to them is my crew inside. And if something, if the pump shuts down, cavitates, whatever, loss of water, burst line, you have mere seconds, if that. So, driver operator was something that I've always held near and dear to my heart. And, I've always kind of looked at it like around the country, true truck company departments and true engine company departments. And I've always kind of been like, man, I wish we were that, because my heart lies in truck company stuff. However, the longer I've got on the job, I'm like, you know what? I'm actually pretty fortunate that in my part of the country, we kind of have to be like all of that, because otherwise I may have missed out on some really cool shit, to be honest with you, and a lot of knowledge. And this is kind of where, I'm no magician. I'm no phenom. Anybody could do what I do. It's just, you got to put the effort into it and learn. And I've been fortunate that, I've put myself in positions, and I've had others around me that, mentor and teach and, spill their information and knowledge into me. And all I'm trying to do is just give that to other people, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and Roy, I want to hear from you and Mike both on this, because I think that part of being a driver operator, a chauffeur, a driver engineer, a FADO, whatever your department calls it, is actually having the ability to lead, but also lead upward. And you have an officer on the rig, and you guys have been in that position as well. You've ridden that right front seat, you've been in that chauffeur seat. But give an example. When you get on the fire scene, you as that driver operator, you as that chauffeur, the most advantageous spot for that rig to be parked, and for the mission that you've been given. And you might have, the guy in the white helmet or the gal on the way, whoever it is, saying, "Hey, I want you here." Versus, what I got into the habit of, when I became a white hat, was saying, "Here's your mission, here's your box to operate in.
Do your
You
job.
figure it out." Versus, and I know when I was chauffeuring a lot, I'd be told, I want you right here, and I pull up on the scene like, this is shit. I can't do what you're asking me to do effectively, and you don't want to sit there and have the argument and save the baby by committee, but Mike and Roy, can you guys talk for a minute about kind of when you lead, you have to lead either up, down, or sideways, or across rather. But as a driver engineer, sometimes you have to lead up, and your officer might be a fill-in that day. You might have a strictly an engine company guy, or you might have someone who's come over from a paramedic unit who has the the butter bar and the collar that day, but doesn't really have the reps and sets on that piece of apparatus and those capabilities and limitations. So can you guys kind of expand on that a little bit? What your thoughts are on kind of you leading up and leading across?
Yeah, I'll jump in because I can bring. Roy has done a great job of bringing that perspective of engine operations to it. And I would say that, and I think we all can recognize that we have our weak areas. If there was an area that I would like to learn more about, it would be that. I've spent, I guess, the negative side of what Roy was, your fire department being so dynamic, is in mine. We are fairly one-sided, and you learn your discipline, and that becomes your trade. And I've been on a truck for over 18 years, so I've been my engine operations have been neglected. But I will say that I've been a driver for quite a few of those years, a chauffeur. The driver of an apparatus is the all-knowing when it comes to that piece. They are expected to know every tool on that piece. They are expected to know how to troubleshoot every piece of equipment on that piece. And they are expected to direct personnel on how to use it. They also are, in my mind, are tempo setters. And we understand that our officer kind of controls the tempo upon arrival, but we set the stage. We actually initiate that tempo in responding.
Kind of quietly behind the scenes, and exactly.
Yes. Absolutely. So, from the moment we get on the rig and get moving down the road, everything that we do actually starts setting the stage for how things are going to operate when we arrive. For us in my position driving, it is being familiar with your area, being familiar with your occupancy types and structures in your area, being able to almost give the guys on the way there an idea of what you're about to head into. And of course, your running route, how you get there, the speed in which you get there, and the things that happen along that route are going to help either pump everybody up, keep everyone on an even keel, or almost throw a negative in. So that is a very important job to have, knowing that you do set that tempo from the minute you get behind the wheel. And then, of course, upon arrival, the decisions that you make could, improve the situation or make it worse, depending on how that goes. So I know here, that has been very common practice because unfortunately, we tend to race even our partnering companies to the scene. So that has always been the way that our culture and our tradition here has been. And for better or worse, it does allow that framework for setting the tempo of how the rest of the operation is going to go. So, you get drivers that are calm and kind of get everybody going in that direction, and they'll tell everybody what the type of structure is. When I was a rookie, I had a driver that when we would get in to go to a dwelling, he would be able to almost tell us everything about that dwelling on the way there. and he would say, hey, you're going to need the 35. Make sure you get that off. You're going to need one on the Delta side and one on Alpha. This is what we're going into. And he was very calm about saying that on the way there. He was the guy that had all the answers, even though the one that was calling the shots, was sitting in that officer's seat. But the guy that had all the answers to all your questions, to all your problems, was sitting behind that steering wheel. So, that helped set the tempo. It helped calm everyone down. It helped put everyone in the right frame of mind for what they were about to do. There were times where, he would put you, once we arrived on scene, that spotting of that rig made your life great, or it really handicapped you for the rest of the operation because of the amount of territory you had to hump those ground ladders. That can smoke you marching a 35 up 2 blocks and down the back alley. That's exhausting, and you haven't even done any work yet. Or you get the guys that can put that truck in an area that just doesn't make sense, theoretically. And, you're just amazed that they were able to squeeze a rig into the spot they did, and you get out and, man, your operation's really easy, all because they knew exactly what they were doing from the moment they got behind the wheel. So I would say that of all the positions, it is the most vital part of our company operations and being successful, because it does set that tempo for everybody else inside the cab of that truck. But that's, I'm always interested to hear the engine side of it. Here, I'm used to seeing our pump operators, just making sure that they beat that other engine in. And that usually is first, because that's going to grab you the fire. So that's at the top of their list, is making sure that they are first on scene. And normally the guys that get there first on scene are the guys that do a fantastic job as a pump operator.
Because the guys that want to get there first are the guys that are trying to get there first.
Right. And Roy, in your opening remarks, it says it all. The guys that get there first are the guys that know the area. The guys that know the area are the guys that know their job. And the guys that know their job are the guys that love this calling. And, in the fire department culture today, and in, it's taken a hit, and it's taken a couple blows, and I feel like it's been set back a little bit. Almost, people are almost demonized for loving the job anymore. And, these guys that know their area and know their job and get you there first, well, they're the ones that love the job. And listening to you talk initially, Roy, you're obviously one of those guys that love the job. And I feel like, this is a great platform for letting people know it is okay to be in love with this career. It's okay. It's okay to have someone call you squirrely, because, believe it or not, that's a compliment.
Yes.
When someone says that, because every little facet of whatever topic is being discussed, and then in return they say, man, you're so squirrely. That means you know a lot. And I'm jealous that I don't know that much.
And the funny thing is all I want to do is share it with everybody.
Right.
So typically the guys complaining about that, they're jealous, and they won't tell you they're jealous, but they kind of look at you sideways, and they're jealous. And it's like, listen, man, like, there's nothing to be jealous of. Like, I want to give you all of this.
Right.
Like, again, like I said before, I'm nothing special. I'm a product of the people that I looked up to, and I want to be that for everybody, down the line, period. Like, this profession and the people that we are here to help deserve better. And like you said, like, the fire service has taken a hit. It's taken a hit everywhere, I think. We've got new generation of people, and, they're not good, they're not bad. I'm not, I'm no old timer. I'm no salty guy. I turn 39 tomorrow, actually. Tomorrow's my birthday, by the way. Cheers.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you. But at the same time, I've got a little bit, I think, of like a older school mentality. You got to earn people's respect. Like, you don't walk in the firehouse and, just get handed my respect. I want to give it to you, but like you have to earn it. Like that's something that means something to me. Like you gaining that from me is worthwhile. You know what I'm saying? And vice versa. I didn't walk in to meet Chief Steven for the first time and just, expect that this guy was going to be like, oh, yeah, NRC, like, here you go. Here's all my respect. He talked my ear off for the first several times I met him. And I know he was feeling me out and seeing what I knew and seeing if I was worthy of teaching his people. And you know what? Pardon my French, but that's fucking how it should be. Like, if it wasn't like that, frankly, I don't want to teach for his department. If he was just going to like give me the keys to the kingdom, so to speak, and teach his people, that's not somewhere that I want to be. I want to work for people that want the best and want the best for their people. And again, I digress for a second. So the driver thing, let's talk about that for a second. And, I don't know if the intention is to like, have like back and forth, but I can pretty much, it's funny. You work for Baltimore, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So I'm down in South Florida. You're, damn near Northeast. Do they consider that Northeast, Baltimore?
It's right there on the cusp.
Okay. So
yeah, mid-Atlantic Northeast.
Yep.
So the thing about driver, just like you said, I teach 80-hour driver class, and then these guys and these girls go to get promoted, and that's I want them to succeed clearly. But I tried to instill in them. I'm like, listen, what I'm teaching you is just it's numbers. Like this class is not about teaching you how to be a driver or a chauffeur. I'm teaching you how to pump a truck. Do you see what I'm saying? It's two completely different things. You have to get that yourself. I cannot teach you those intangibles. The driver is the tone setter, the middleman between the crew and the officer, right? He's the referee. He's the toolbox. Okay. And I'm not a driver anymore, but I'm telling you right now, that position is so ultra important to the fire service that, again, down in our part of the world, I think, or part of the nation, I think sometimes it gets a little overlooked. And it's like, listen, so what I strived for when I was the driver, on a ladder, on a quint, technically, okay, 78-foot straight stick, but cross lays, pump on the truck. You want to talk about placement issues. Let's talk about that, because I'm the ladder on scene and potentially fire attack as well. So, there were issues there, but amongst other goals that I had, my main goal was to alleviate the pressure off of the captain. Okay. Trust me. You don't have to worry about placement. You don't have to worry about where the hydrant is. You don't have to worry about, giving me directions on how to get to this call. You don't have to worry about occupancy type. Like, let me take that off of you. So, because God knows you've got, and you being the captain, have so many other things to worry about. But when a captain doesn't trust their driver, or when you have a driver that doesn't take their job seriously and they're not at that level, like you said, it's a domino effect, and it can turn into a shit show. You know what I'm saying? So all I tried to do was be the best driver I could be, set the tone, and nail everything I could. And kind of like I said before, the captain's running the show. Like, I'm a captain now, albeit I'm on days. However, any crew and captain with a good driver knows as well as I do that the driver is kind of like the down and dirty, behind the scenes, like making sure shit is going smooth. With all due respect to captains, and lieutenants like I am. You know what I'm saying? You guys agree with that, or do you disagree, or what's your thoughts on that?
No, actually, Roy, I agree wholeheartedly. And, from not only personal experience, as a driver operator, but also, as an officer, I've seen some chauffeurs get really, really upset when they had someone try to micromanage them. Then when they had that person in the right front seat, because basically, if you say, "Hey, here's the mission," be very mission specific and let them run. Take the clip off the dog leash and let them run. If you've trained them, if you've done your job, let them do, because they know that apparatus, they know the personality of it. And I'll kind of extend on what you said about being the referee. Really, I think you're more akin to being a goalie when you're on that engine, because you know the capabilities and limitations of that piece of apparatus. And I pump fires where I've had every single line off and I'm pumping to capacity, and my intake's down, getting ready to hit zero. I'm getting ready to cavitate, and I have a white hat come over and say, "Hey, I need this, I need that," or you have someone, because if you're that first due engine, your apparatus is going to get violated. I mean, everything's coming off your stuff. So you have to be that goalie. But again, this is where you have to be able to lead upward, and you do it with the appropriate decorum. Obviously,
it takes tact.
Well, and that's not always easy. But when they say, "Hey, I need you to pump another 2.5 line," and you're like, "Well, Chief, people hell with ice water too," but they're not going to get that either. You've got to be able to tell them, "Look, I'm tapped out. We have to find a different tactic," because those people know. And a lot of times, I think strategically and tactically, from an instant command perspective, sometimes I think that we forget, if we even had that background. Depending on your department, you might not have had to come up through that process to have been a driver operator or a pump operator, and you don't know the capabilities and limitations, and you're tasking somebody to push something beyond its capabilities, which they can do. I mean, they say, "Hey, look, I got another 30% in this thing," but at the same time, you've got to be able to tactfully, if you can, say, "Look, hey, Chief, Captain, BC, whomever you are, you can't get blood from a stone. It's just not going to happen." So, to me, that's just as important, and also being that almost that protector of the peace, because again, the first due engine, first due truck, you get raped on the scene. I mean, that's just no other delicate way to put it.
There's no way around it.
But I think that's what one of the most important things is, to empower some of our driver operators, and especially that relationship between those two people riding in the front of that cab. They've got to be on the same page, because I've had somebody in my previous fire service life who was detailed from another shift to a station, where they would sit there and micromanage the crap out of one of my chauffeurs and say, "Hey, when you get on scene, you need to park here, and you need to pull like 5 more feet up." And finally the guy just literally called me. I was off duty. I was on vacation. He goes, "Man, I hate to bother you, but this freaking captain's driving me nuts. Can you call him and just tell him to back off? Because he said, if not, you're not going to see me for 3 shifts, because that's what I'm going to get the non-paid vacation coming up." And basically, if you need to develop that relationship, I think, between the officer and the chauffeur, to say, "All right, let's look at the mission by the type of occupancy." And it's almost like, and Mike would agree with this too, it's like being on the truck. I shouldn't need to tell my crew to, "Hey, I need you to ladder the roof. I need you to take the saw up to the highest point of the roof. I want you to cut a minimum of 4x4 foot hole. I need you to poke through, make sure that you get the sub ceiling." Basically, I can go, I should be able to, knock on the back glass. Well, sorry, that's a dated reference. I should be able to turn around in the cab or get on my headset and go, "Hey guys, go ahead and walk the dog on the roof. Open it up."
Right.
They take care of business. So, to me, it's incumbent upon not only your SOP, but also that relationship of the crew, specifically the driver and the officer, but the crew as a whole, to kind of get your shit together, get your poop in a group at the beginning of the shift, and train on that, so that those things are going to be taken care of. And as the officer, you can just tell your FADO or your driver engineer, "Hey, this is a commercial structure. We're going to be pulling a 2.5 off the rear," whatever, and set them up for success, but don't micromanage them. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, Roy?
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, micromanaging anybody is really not a great thing. And I mean, even more so the driver. Like, you can't micromanage a good driver. I mean, it's like this thing that, it's like you can't. So micromanaging people that know what the hell they're doing is you're handcuffing this person. You know what I'm saying? Like so you want the dog on the leash that you have to hold back, rather than the person that you have to constantly, push forward. You know what I'm saying? So
No,
empower
I
your
do.
drivers and all your people for that matter to get better at their job. Instead of, people feel like micromanaging is, I have to do this because they don't know what they're doing. Well, instead of micromanaging, why don't you spend your time, teaching them and empowering them and getting them to be better? Because really, what are we doing when we micromanage? What we're doing when we micromanage is we don't trust them and we don't trust ourselves in our decision making. Okay. So, I mean, I agree wholeheartedly. Again, the driver thing is it's the best position in the department, if you ask me, to be completely honest.
And Roy, I think, I agree that I think that when you get into the habit of micromanaging, it's very demotivating.
Yeah.
And most of these folks, I mean, if you create the right culture, and not to say that we all do, but when you create the right culture, they're going to tell you if they have the tools or the experience or knowledge to do their job. They'll feel comfortable saying, "Hey, look, Chief Cap, you gave me a task and I want to do it 110%, but I need more information. Help me out here." And that's where we should be. It shouldn't be that thing. And you and I and Ben had talked kind of pre-show that sometimes whether you call it the 50-mile rule, the 2-county rule, whatever the case is, sometimes it's not the message as much as it is the messenger. Like, in my case, I'm very, very blessed to have a relatively young and, highly motivated workforce. I mean, these people are hungry. They want to learn. I'm blessed to work with this group, but at the same time, I hold a position in that department that, some of them are going to nod their head because they agree with what I'm saying, and others are going to nod their head because I don't want to disagree with what the guy's saying. I could be completely full of shit and dead wrong. And, I want them to challenge me on that. And sometimes, I do. I'll plant those seeds to just kind of feel it out a little bit, not in a negative way, but just to say, okay, I don't want a bunch of bobbleheads, because after a while, I mean, I love the instructional part. I love passing these things along, but as instructors, like we said before, we not only pass along our experience and our knowledge, but we also pass along our deficits. Yes. And we kind of, like anybody else, we're human. So we kind of, revert to what we're the most comfortable with. And that might not be the best thing. That might not be the most operationally sound thing for that area that you're involved with. Me and Mike come from, a very similar areas. Well, as a matter of fact, he's kind of my, in the other department, he's essentially my replacement from when I retired, which, they definitely elevated up on that one. But,
he's a lot better looking, at least.
Oh my God. Yeah. Well, he's got, at least he's not faking the hair. I mean, I got some in the front, but none in the back, but these are the things that, to me in my department, that's why I feel that, as passionate as I might be or feel or trying to get the message across, sometimes I need to bring, and I try to do as often as I can, bring other people in, because I'll sound like Charlie Brown's teacher after a while. They hear wah, 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 wah. Not because they're disinterested, but I'm the same voice, week after week. And I always say, Tuesday's training is Wednesday's mission. So, and that sounds good, but just like the high-rise training we've done recently, I've had brothers from, 3 different departments within 2 different counties, and they all served within a third different county way back in their fire service youth. So they're bringing a completely different perspective, even though we're all saying relatively the same thing. I mean, so if I get 10 people to hear something that I've said 100 times, but in a different way, and now it resounds with them, great. So, I think that's one of the things that, as not only officers, but as instructors, you got to put your ego aside and realize that sometimes you need to find a different way to put the message. Look, I am a morbid idiot when it comes to technology and apps and everything else. And, I have a very young workforce. So, I can talk about cable driven throttles on a fire engine all day long. And that sounds great. I mean, but I might as well tell them about, what kind of, feed blend we used to give the horses back in the stable before we hooked them up to the steamer. It's kind of the same parallel. So, with that being said, sometimes you got to find a different way to put that message forward. And, I think that's what's valuable about having kind of a generational span, where you can get some of these things in there and you can actually have that conversation in front of the students, not to confuse them, but you can have a conversation in front of them that, like say, you and I, Roy, might agree on 95% of stuff, but there might be 5% that we're going to debate until we're blue in the face. But at least they see why we feel that way about stuff. And I think that's valuable too, to get them to, not in a negative way, but to question their training and say, hey, why does this exist? Not just the theoretical that we teach them, but to say, like one of my former career guys, he's now with county. He's doing fantastic. But, when he first came on the job, he was trying to learn some stuff and he's very, very hungry. And every shift I would give him a homework assignment. I'm like, okay, hey, how many holes are in the barrel strainer of the suck, or how many holes are in the barrel strainer on that suction tube? And he'd go out and dutifully count them. And he'd come back and he's like, oh, 64 holes. I'm like, great. Why are they there? Why are they that diameter?
Yes.
And and he goes, I'm like, I don't need to know now, but tomorrow morning when I come back in, at shift change, I said, give me a report. And I mean, so this guy, he was on it, and it wasn't always the YouTube or the Google something. He had to reach out to some guys that he never met before, and hey, I called down to here. I talked to this person who was a pump operator in XYZ county for 30 years, and so now he knew why. And and that's what I'm hoping. It's like, what? It might seem like a bullshit thing at the time, but I'm hoping that maybe, as he's probably getting ready to step up into a company level officer role very, very soon, these might be some things he passes down to kind of inspire that next generation. And I think that should be the hope. But, from your guys' perspective, especially as trying to instill the, I would say maybe the work ethic in the next generation of driver engineers, driver operators. What would be some sage advice if I were a firefighter, EMT, firefighter, paramedic, and I'm starting to show an interest in being a driver engineer? Give me the tailboard sage advice conversation.
All right, so first and foremost, to this generation, I would tell them to get good with your hands, get good with hand tools, wrenches, screwdrivers. A lot of guys don't understand, how that relates to the job. But listen, the driver engineer's got to be mechanically inclined. I'm not saying, if you throw a piston or, something crazy like that you've got to fix it on the spot, but you've got to know your way around mechanical components. You have to know your way around a toolbox. You have to, like I think Mike said earlier, the driver has the answers. When I first started, there was a driver that I emulated, and this guy was salty. This guy was rough around the edges, to say the very least. But you know what this guy was? This guy was the guy that if you had a question that nobody else knew the answer to, guaranteed this is the guy that you would go to. So strive to be that person, because historically, traditionally, that is the driver, the chauffeur, and we need to continue that. It's not just a position. With all due respect to everybody else, it's not just a position. It's a position that serves a very, very important purpose, and it's not necessarily spot in the ladder truck, and it's not necessarily pumping to the right pressure. It's a whole big picture of navigating and helping manage a firehouse and its personnel and being somebody that they could go to. Because like you said earlier, Chief, the lieutenant, the captain, they may not have ever been a driver. Okay. The people under you, if your lieutenant or captain was not a driver, and the paramedics and the EMTs and the firefighters underneath you are not drivers, you are the only driver that ever has been in that firehouse on that shift, correct? At that moment. So who knows that apparatus better and the equipment and the tools on that apparatus? So what I tell your guys when I teach them, and anywhere else I'm teaching this driver class, outside of the theories and the numbers and the charts and all this stuff, I try to instill in them. I'm like, listen, you have to understand that this is a monumentally important thing. Okay, this position, this undertaking that you are, trying to accomplish, and you have to take it with the utmost amount of pride and seriousness, because people are going to come to you. They're going to come to you with questions, and you need to have the answers. And if you don't have the answers, you need to get the answers for them. And that needs to carry on, because when we start letting that go, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 30 years from now, 50 years from now, it's lost. And I would only imagine that it would be very, very, very difficult, if not impossible, to retrieve that if too much time has elapsed. And if the driver becomes nothing more than, just another crew member that happens to be driving the truck, because it's about a lot more than that. And probably the biggest single thing that I do say and will continue to say to the young member that's aspiring to be a driver is, listen, this ladder, this engine, whatever it is, and every piece of equipment on it, this is your responsibility to know everything about it. Because if you don't, and you're the driver, who does? You know what I'm saying? Like, you're it. This is you. So, let that sink in. And hopefully that's when, these younger members or members that are aspiring to be drivers, are listening to that and they take that seriously. And, again, that's how my brain works, at least. But I know my brain doesn't necessarily work like everybody else's. And that's a whole nother topic for another show, would be the new generation of firefighters that we're all hiring, and, how to navigate through how they think and how they learn and stuff. Mike, what are your thoughts?
I completely agree. And one thing I wanted to piggyback on that I think is important, in the position that all three of us are currently in, and many, many people that watch this, and the people that we work with, is that,
got mail.
We say, in our position of trying to train and trying to disseminate information, Roy, you said, if we don't have the answer, then, we'll do the best we can to find it, or we'll find someone that can give you the answer. One of our jobs, I believe, well, actually two, that could be more important than our knowledge base, is recognizing where our weaknesses are.
Yes.
So when we train people, we're almost like, and I use this analogy a lot. We're almost like the quarterback of a team. It doesn't mean that we're the MVP. It doesn't mean that we have all the answers. We just kind of call the plays. However, we know that we can't throw the ball and catch it. So there are many, many times where, if we do not have the best knowledge base in a certain discipline, where it's very important for us to audible and to go to a person that does, and to allow them to step forward, empower them to get their knowledge out there, so that the team is learning together. I feel like a lot of times in our positions, we think that we need to be the ones that educate all the time. And that is a huge problem for us, because in our world, that actually expedites the fact that
or the theory that, hey, we need to go someone 2 counties over, 2 states over to get them to come in here and teach because they're tired of hearing my voice. Yes, they are. And that's why you empower your people, because we do not have all the answers, and we are not the Navy SEALs of the fire service. We do have a lot of education, and that's important for us to give away. But we also have to be humble in the sense of recognizing when we need to pass the ball to a teammate and let them do some teaching. Just empowering them, giving them direction, giving them an outline, letting them practice getting that information out there, and then putting them in front of our team members and allowing them to teach. I think that's very important. And the other thing I think is equally as important, and maybe more so than our knowledge base in our education of the service, is being able to allow your passion for the job, because in our position, you have to be passionate about the job. We need to be the catalyst. We need to be the maestro for making sure that we are passing on that passion. It needs to be contagious. And that is one of the most important parts of being able to teach, being able to, get some people, as we've talked about in the culture that we currently have today. Some people just show up for the paycheck. Mm-hmm. We have to find a way to make them passionate about the job. We have to find something to pull out of them to make them buy in, to make them believe that this is more than just a paycheck. And I think that is probably the most important thing that we can do as educators in that sense, is to get them to say, hey, I want to know more. And I enjoy this. This isn't just a paycheck anymore. This is a passion of mine. And I think that's probably the most important thing that we can do in our positions. And I keep going back to the fact that our education is very important, but not as important as our passion, because when you're able to instill that in others around you that don't necessarily have it, then they will take that and they will go and start to educate themselves, because they become passionate. They want to learn more. They want to become self-starters. So I would say that is one of the most important things that we could do. And of course, I drew all that right off of your statement, but and it doesn't go into any driver training or anything like that. But I think that's something important to touch on.
No, and Mike, I agree. And we've actually hit the little over the hour mark, so I'm going to get you guys to do your final wrap-ups. But Mike, I couldn't agree more. And I know, Roy, you're cut from the same cloth. Be that fire geek, be that fire nerd. I mean, and Mike, if you want to check my numbers, you're welcome to. But I can tell you on ladder, well, whatever it's redesignated now. I think it's truck 3, but ladder 6. I can tell you that the jack span is 16 feet 8 inches. I can tell you from the turntable to the bucket is 42 feet. I can tell you from the turntable to the tip of the bucket is 46 feet. I can tell you it's 48 feet 11 inches bumper to bumper. I can tell you it's 11 feet 2 inches side to side. Those were the things, like when I would teach truck company class and aerial operator class, before I even touched a button, a knob, anything, they took that measuring tape and they learned inside and out. How tall is it? How wide is it? Where can you get this? Where can't you get it? If you fold the mirrors in, what kind of alley can get this thing down? If the mirrors are out, which one are you willing to take off to get down that alley? Just like you said, squeezing that ladder truck into a place that no one ever thought possible. And, my disclaimer, I'm not encouraging, reckless damage to fire apparatus, blah, 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 because none of us want a memo to come out in our name or, have pages, 7 through 13 of the HR manual to be named after. That's not what I'm getting at. But my point being is, you've got to be just like over the top learning about that piece of apparatus, even to the point, like I've got some of my folks, and and Roy, this is a lot from your inspiration. They called the manufacturer, they called the technicians, and when the technicians come up there to spin wrenches on the engine, guess what? My guys are freaking waist deep in underneath that cab with the technicians learning. And I've got some guys who are mechanically sound. I mean, they run heavy equipment, they have their side businesses, they have dump trucks and all that kind of stuff. But these guys, I mean, are literally ass deep underneath that cab, and coming out more full of grease than the freaking service technician, because they want to learn the parts and pieces, man. And I almost equate it to that, like we do it with SCBA. It's almost like that Marine rifleman. This is my rifle. There are many like it, but this one is mine. It is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it. I must master my life. They want to know the parts, the pieces, the capabilities and limitations. They want to keep it clean. They want to keep it ready. They want to, and so, they can never learn enough about that piece of equipment. And it's almost to the point, and I encourage this. I mean, these guys they'll sit there and lambaste somebody if they use the wrong freaking sponge to wash it. I mean, that's freaking awesome. If that's the shift war that I have to intervene in, that, hey, you guys used the wrong soap to wash the engine. Big picture, engine's getting washed, it's getting maintained, they're taking pride in it. And if this guy uses the shitty soap and this guy uses the premium stuff, great. That is exactly what I want to see. Have that pride and ownership, but they just can't learn enough about it. And Mike probably had to pop off, as we could see with the flashing lights in the background. He's out on the street, and I was very glad to see that he was keeping his head behind the B post out there in Baltimore City. Smart move. That's experience. But hey, Roy, if you want to go ahead and give your final thoughts, and then we'll wrap up and get out of here.
Yeah, I mean, again, thanks for everybody tuning in. Chief, thanks to you, Mike, Ben, for having me. Hopefully I get invited back today. I've got a lot of passion for this job. I'd love to share it with everybody as much as I can. Passion and knowledge is only so valuable, especially when you keep it to yourself. Like, it's kind of worthless, to be honest with you. So you got to spread it. You got to share it. I want to empower everybody around me to do the same. We kind of hit on a lot of driver stuff, pump operator. We talked some instructor stuff, so I'll kind of keep it on that, my closing remarks. For you instructors out there, it's kind of funny that this was brought up about teaching the whys. When you become an instructor, you kind of become a product of the people that you emulate, the surroundings around you. You don't necessarily, contrary to popular belief, you don't necessarily pick and choose, what type of instructor you become. Fortunately, I think, became the type of instructor that I love to teach the whys, because that's how I learn. Listen, if you're not learning the whys, why we do things and why we don't do things and why this exists and why that doesn't, then frankly, we could just put out a Target Solutions and send it out and have people read it, and you can teach yourself. It's a deeper level when you teach people the whys. So for all of you instructors out there, budding instructors, keep that in mind, and that's another level. That's you're gonna have to put in the effort to get there, because you can know something, but when you can teach why we do those things, that's a whole nother level. I'm still striving to get there on everything. Again, I could talk for another hour. Hopefully you guys have me on again in the future. Chief, much appreciated. And that's it. That's all I got.
Awesome, Roy. Well, thank you very much. And we're very, very pleased and honored to have you on tonight, and just kind of having this tailboard conversation with everybody. And I think that goes a lot further than having the scripted shows and throwing out a bunch of BS buzzwords. But great respect to you. Of course, National Rescue Consultants, because been a solid organization that I've had the privilege of working with in my department, in my career and volunteer department, and always brings quality work. And Roy, I can say hands down, we've had you there several times for specific classes, and every single time, I know as soon as that chapter closes on the training, my folks are 1,000,000% better than when they first went in, and they have the the confidence and competence, and that that comes from not only the passion and the knowledge, but also just the desire to make sure that at 3:00 in the morning, if these guys and gals have a call, that you can sleep well knowing that you've trained them well, and that they're going to be able to function. And appreciate everything you've done. Not only fire service wise, but instructional wise, and for my department as well. So. Roy Friedrich, thank you so much. National Rescue Consultants, check them out also. Phenomenal organization, great instructors on that end. And, a lot of people, Roy will watch this podcast, not only live, but also use it for training after the fact. But, please reach out. Roy, we don't have your contact information to put up on the screen. Ben would usually do that, but obviously had to hop off, and I just do not have the technological prowess
Me neither.
But either way, if you want to reach out, please do. Reach out through social media, through the website, through email, whatever the case is. Send a carrier pigeon, a flare. We don't care. We want to make sure that you get the information. So, Mike, we see you're blanked out there, but I just texted Mike. He's still okay. He didn't fall and face the earth there in Baltimore, which is a good thing. But
hopefully he's catching jobs up there.
It's a tough life, but somebody's got to do it, man. Okay. So. It's all good. But, Roy, thank you so much for coming on tonight, and we appreciate it, brother, and be safe.
All right. Thanks, Chief. Take care, everybody. Be safe.
Cheers.